License to Kill is proudly sponsored by Pest Patrol and Polaris Pest Group. Pest Patrol has been a long-standing supporter of the LTK community. Their continued commitment helps strengthen our mission, and we appreciate their support to keep our agents the best in the field. Polaris Pest Group is your ethical partner in growth. Looking to sell your business? Polaris is a values-driven private equity group dedicated to honoring your legacy and building upon your company's long-term aspirations. This episode is also supported by Swarm Pest Control Marketing. Swarm Pest Control Marketing is a digital marketing partner, and Swarm Mastermind helps leaders scale with confidence.
Welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges that we face as an industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show. Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the License to Kill show, Season 2, Episode 1. We're coming out the gate with a hotly contested debate amongst the professional industry right now about whether or not general public or everyday consumers should have access to products to remedy their homes, and what level of access does that mean? We're going to dive into some of that, the nuance of that. We're going to cover quite a few topics this evening as well. So we're going to be going over what are the impacts of the new Monsanto lawsuit that just finished up and the effects we might see on the retail market after that. We're going to be talking about the 97% and this huge amount of the marketplace that we're going to be jockeying for. We're going to be talking about pest control, pesticide, and public safety, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the impact for PCOs in this space. So before we kick it off, I may ask either party to kind of argue the extremes of their position. That may not mean that this is just these people's individual viewpoint. So before we get too far into arguing all the way to the left or all the way to the right, I actually like to go ahead and open the floor to you guys one at a time to give your actual position and state where you're actually at in this space. So Andrew, I'll open it up to you first. Tell me a little bit about your position on pro-regulation and what are the benefits that you're hoping to articulate tonight behind that, and where do you draw the line on just how far, that way when we know when I'm asking you to kind of push beyond where your actual personal beliefs may be at.
Sure. So I'm pretty happy with the risk-based access that we kind of have with our regulations right now. General public can get, general use sort of materials, and then we have restricted use materials and whatnot. I think that center will shift to be more restrictive as time goes on. I think as people get less younger generations, they maybe their parents or grandparents or great grandparents did. But I see that there's a lot of good that is done to the professional industry via regulation. There's a lot of exclusivity that's created. Our industry could be more professional. We can command a higher rate from our customers, and we can pay a higher wage to our technicians. All those are good things and has shown a track record throughout history of professionalization of our industry, beginning pre-FIFRA to today. We've gotten only more and more professional every time there's been regulatory advancement. But I do think that there is a strong argument for over-the-counter access, and mainly in the issues of access to affordable pest management is not in everybody's wheelhouse. So if you take things from the over-the-counter market, you do limit access. And I think having a pest-free living situations kind of a basic human right. So we run into a little bit of an ethical delay. Actual position best. That's pride of New Yorker. I'm Hanson's.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. And I think we've seen some kind of congruent examples of other industries and other markets that have followed that same pattern, right? The pharmaceutical industry with controlled substances, or even the nuclear industry. When things are considered not accessible to the general public or require some kind of credentialization or some kind of controlled access, whether that be through prescription or otherwise, it doesn't typically harm the professional side of the industry. There's plenty of argument to be said about, like you said, access. A lot of people go without medical care because they don't feel like going through the rigmarole of all that. So we don't necessarily have to compare the industries exactly apples to apples, but you can still see where, when a dangerous product is treated with a sense of government regulation, it does increase service value, it does increase ticket value, which then in turn increases wages oftentimes. But we've seen cases otherwise. So, all right, Sean, give me a little bit of perspective on your side of the aisle. Tell me a little bit where you stand. Where should access lie, and let me know where your line is on as far as what is considered too much, or maybe I don't misconstrue your argument as thinking that like everybody should have access to everything all the time everywhere. That might be the case, but I don't know. I want you to tell me where your line's at.
So surely not. But, you know, anybody who's ever been a pest control professional for any amount of time understands that some limitations should be in place, but those limitations are already in place. Any products that have the potential to cause harm or environmental impact are already labeled restricted use and require a license in order to purchase. That's true in any state where that product is restricted use. That being said, there is a huge difference between commercial grade insecticides and consumer grade insecticides and commercial grade, pest control products and materials. So there's all of those items have already been given EPA registration numbers, EPA establishment numbers. We get hung up on, I'm not a fan of regulation. I'm not a fan of regulation at all. Pass a law, because a law is something that gets voted on. Regulations are made in committees. It is not a law, but carries the force of law, which means you can be fined, imprisoned, have your license taken, all these different things. Obviously, homeowners aren't worried about getting their pest control license taken. But overregulation is overreach. I'm not a fan of that. At the same time, you already have a lot of things in the hands of homeowners that do it themselves that are a potential hazard. Oven cleaner is a great example, but we're not going to start hiring professional oven cleaners. They're going to go get a can of Easy Off and they're going to go spray their oven down. So giving more people access to more professional products actually can reduce the amount of pesticides used, because a lot of the over-the-counter pesticides are overused, whereas not as much of a more professional product would correct the problem. So I do think that people should have the right to choose, one, because it's more cost effective for them. Should the pest control industry make more money? Should technicians get paid more money? Yeah, sure. But what about the people who can't afford it? So there have already been multiple plays on this. Most recently, there was a move to make all rodenticides across the board restricted use. But that would have been very detrimental. The losses on stored products alone would have been in the billions of dollars. So there's reasons why you can't really move in that direction. I'm not for regulation. We already have regulations in place, and we already have restrictions on the pesticides that have the potential to cause harm to people and the environment. Most of what we have left today is about as harmful to people as table salt is, realistically.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about maybe somewhere we're definitely going to have a little bit of common ground, and that's going to be Amazon. right? The big whale in the room, Amazon, is acting like a distributor at times and is giving people access to professional grade products, even in gallon size quantities, which, although I can appreciate that the products nowadays are not nearly as dangerous as they once were, a gallon of concentrated product in a waterway or down the drain or in an area where it shouldn't be, close to a body of water, could still be absolutely environmentally impactful. And yet, Amazon is kind of operating in this gray space where they're not a distributor, but yet they're moving a lot of product around, and they're acting in a way like a distributor. So talk to me a little bit about, your viewpoint on this. Is this appropriate? Should we continue to be allowing that to continue to take place? Is that safe because there are stores underneath the Amazon banner, the sellers on the store? Are those people maintaining the safety level that is necessary? And also, what are your thoughts on straight to your door access to these products without having someone in that retail space to educate? Because I know you make the point about less product could be used, and that's true, but typically we don't see professionals abusing and overusing products. It generally is the everyday consumer that says, well, if 1 ounce will kill them, 5 ounces will really kill them dead. And that just may not necessarily, and we know as operators, there's a reason why they said exactly this amount, because this is where it's optimized for its effectiveness, not too much, not too little. And, so talk to me a little bit about that as far as the Amazon aspect of it, and this product showing directly up to the consumer. Is the label enough?
Well, the label is enough. And I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say this at the same time. We, as service professionals, love to tout our license. Well, we're a licensed professional. At the same time, every licensed professional knows the label is the law, which means the label is the primary safety document, all licenses aside. So the problem is getting people to read the label, but that exists on both sides of the fence. Service professionals are not always professional. I've been in this industry for 28 years, in the field for most of that. And I've met countless pest control technicians that just used the product the boss told them to use. They didn't know what the mode of action of the product was. They never read the label on the product. They couldn't tell you if it was a synthetic pyrethroid. All they knew was the boss gave them a big jug of Bifin IT and said, use 1 ounce per gallon.
Okay.
So it's not like they're any more educated than the average homeowner who didn't read the label. If somebody took the time to read the label, and being in retail sales, I get customers that'll buy a product and return it 2 days later unopened because they read the label and said, I just don't want to use this around my animals. Hey, fair enough. I know it's not going to hurt your animals, but if you're uncomfortable and you've taken the time to read the label and the warnings and it makes you uncomfortable, I will give you your money back. No problem. But, to say, well, let's keep all this on the professional side. Not everybody who drives a pest control truck is a great professional and a responsible person. So that also exists.
Okay.
Should Amazon, let me know if I'm going too long,
No,
by
no.
the way.
No, there's no time limit on tonight's debate.
Should Amazon be limited? The answer is 100% yes. Should Amazon be limited by third-party sellers? The answer is undeniably yes. And the reason is, on commercial pesticide products and materials, the law is different state by state. So if you're not allowed to buy that in your state, but you order on Amazon from me, a third-party seller, and I ship it to your state can actually reach out with $1,000 fine to me because you ordered it, and Amazon demands that I fulfill the order. Even if it's not legal in your state, they ordered it from Texas, and it shows up in their state where they're not legally allowed to buy it. It's still illegal to buy it.
Is the enforcement behind that robust enough?
It's not, because it happens all the time. We've gotten one fine. We've been selling on Amazon for several years. But large quantities is what I believe should be limited. Most homeowners can get by with a 16-ounce bottle of Suspend for their general pest control for the next year and a half in most cases. They don't need a gallon.
Nope.
It's going to sit in their tool shed and cook out after 2 or 3 years, and then it's not going to work anymore, and they're going to throw half of it away in the trash can. And it's going to end up in a landfill. So
that's
yes,
not environmentally a good thing though either.
Well, it's not, but if all the heat and UV has cooked it out, it's not. It's inert at that point too. So, just saying that's true. But okay, if we're talking about protection of people and environment, people change their own motor oil in the driveway and then pour it in their flower beds to kill weeds. That's not environmentally safe, but you can buy motor oil at Kroger. So pesticides, the same thing. Limit the amounts of the size of container they're allowed to purchase, possibly. Amazon has also already delisted a lot of products. Go on Amazon, even right now, and try to buy a gallon of Bifin IT. You can't find it for sale on Amazon.
Yeah, I noticed.
They delisted all the bifenthrin products until Atticus came out with like 7.9, and it squeaked through because Amazon didn't realize it was just 7.9% bifenthrin. They've delisted Taurus. They've delisted Termidor. Most of your professional aerosols like Psychic CS aerosol, Findona aerosol, all that stuff's already been delisted. And eBay has gone through and started delisting some stuff too. But there's still a lot of it available, and it is allowed to cross state lines. And that is where you get into that gray area of, okay, well, you're not legally allowed to buy that in this state, but they'll go on Amazon and get it online. I think the ideal solution would be you're a seller online. They can go to your webpage and buy it, like going to homedepot.com or tractorsupply.com. That way there is somebody that can be held responsible. Amazon won't be held responsible because they'll just say, oh, well, third-party seller.
Right. Andrew, I've seen.
So it's interesting you mentioned
here.
about
Give me some counter here.
It's interesting when you say responsible party. So couple things. You threw out a whole bunch of things I want to I'll try to remember them all to mention. So on the issue of the label, absolutely. Yeah. In 30 years, I've seen a lot of guys that do a lot of dumb things that have licenses, and they probably shouldn't. And it's sad that they are allowed to remain in the industry. I think that comes down to enforcement, and we are much more likely to see, on average, a professional licensed technician do things that basically follow the label versus a homeowner, because there's absolutely no enforcement on the homeowner. If we get audited every single year by our records, what we've done, what the target sites or target organisms were, the application sites, that everything was followed exactly to the letter. They'll stop technicians in the field. They'll check your truck. They'll do field inspections. That is absolutely not happening in anyone's garage. That there's they're buying stuff, they're putting it in there, they're using it however they want. So there's no real enforcement to kind of keep a homeowner doing things by the label. As far as distribution goes, crossing state lines, absolutely a problem. If you look at some of the distributors like Do My Own Pest Control or DoYourOwnPestControl.com or whatever, they won't sell to like New York and California. They kind of keep on that. But if you're not I feel like we could do a better job, again, in enforcement of saying, look, you can only sell pesticides through like an official channel, somebody that's licensed to sell and distribute pesticides, not just like you shouldn't be able to go on eBay and buy it or whatever, like any kind of random place. And then the other thing from your initial comments, you had mentioned it's not most of the stuff that you get over the counter now, it's not harmful to people, and that may be absolutely 100% true. And I've heard this table salt thing before a lot of times, but the goalposts have moved now in regulation to it doesn't have to be harmful, really proven harmful to anything. Just the possibility that someday a bird might get sick and have a problem from this thing is enough for regulations to move. So the homeowner misusing a material, and we see it like you mentioned with the EPA risk mitigation stuff and changes with that over the years, where they're looking to make that all restricted use. And here in New York, we tried to ban all anticoagulants this last legislative session. It's just the mere appearance of an active ingredient in wildlife, not proven to necessarily even be damaging, is enough to cause things to be banned and taken off the market, which makes me nervous when homeowners are able to use that. Where I'll find rodenticides loose outside of people's houses and just all kinds of crazy nonsense with absolutely no oversight over that, and that's what concerns me most of the time
Okay.
with that.
So the oversight comes from the wallet. All right. Commercial professional pesticides are more expensive to buy per container. Cost per gallon ends up being a little cheaper if you actually do the math. But when people walk into my store and they want pesticide, and I say, well, here's what I recommend for you, and the cost is $59.97, and they go, ooh, that's expensive. Well, yeah, but it makes 16 gallons, but they're seeing the total number, the today price. And most people are not wasteful enough to start mixing something that expensive up at 5 ounces per gallon. So that's kind of more of a myth. I would say objectively, you will see less pesticide usage overall from the average homeowner than you will from the company that's going out and doing the quarterly general services, whether they need it or not, because the company wants to keep them on that schedule and make their money. And the company says, well, you got to put on a good show. I don't want you spraying around the house with a 1 gallon pump sprayer. I want you to use your rig on your truck, and I want you to do your 2 feet up and 3 feet out. And that pest control company every 3 months, every 90 days is blowing 6 to 10 gallons out around a customer's house, where the customer is going to go out with a 1 gallon pump sprayer. So even if they did mix it up at 5 ounces per gallon, they're only using 1 gallon for a total of 5 ounces of pesticide, where you came out and put out 8 to 10. So the overusage and environmental impact would ultimately still be less on the homeowner's side, even if they were misusing the product. That part can also be true. So that's
Well,
something to
you're
think.
combining two different things. You're combining two different things, though. One, the application volume doesn't necessarily mean that there's a higher risk. If it's done to the label, the EPA should have done their environmental assessments and said, hey, you can use 10 gallons of this material around the house, and it presents no undue environmental hazard. So the volume may be more, but the risk isn't more, because we'll find stuff that goes directly. I have people spraying their docks with pyrethroids and neonicotinoids. That is extreme. You don't need a lot of it. You don't need 10 gallons. You need a tablespoon, and you got problems. So following the label and using a higher volume doesn't equate to a greater risk to the environment and non-target organisms.
I understand that. I'm just saying that I'm not talking about docks. Spraying pesticides around any body of water is a no-no, and that's on every pesticide package label. People are going to do it anyway. And if you take away that, they'll find something else to do. I've seen people where they want to kill weeds. Well, they could go buy weed killer. It's perfectly legal, but instead they happen to have, some old 5 gallons of gasoline in their tool shed, and they use that instead because it also kills weeds. People are going to do dumb stuff. You're never going to rule that out. And yes, I understand that if you mix it up 1 ounce per gallon and put 10 gallons out, you're at the proper mix rate. But if you mix 4 ounces per gallon, but that gallon is evenly spread around the base of the house, it ultimately works out to about the same, realistically. Yes, your upfront concentration
Well, let's
coming out of the
let's
containers.
talk about that again. Yep. Let's talk about that dock, though. If I park my truck out in your driveway and then I walk out with a B&G on your dock, I got placards on my truck that signify that we're a pest control company. I'm wearing a uniform and I'm out on a dock with a B&G. If the homeowner's out there with a little garden sprayer or a little, they got their Windex that they filled it up, they emptied out, and they're out there spraying their boat hoist with it, no one is stopping and checking on that. I guarantee that the DEC will be checking on us, and like there'll be protections. So there's a higher level of oversight on us.
There,
We're visible,
there
we're
is
recording. The neighbors will even call in on us and say, hey, there's a guy out on the dock spraying stuff.
Sure, I
They're not going
agree
to do
with
it
you
on their
100%
neighbor.
on that. I agree with you
Yep.
100% on that. Where there is, and depending on what state you live in, is going to depend on the level of oversight you get. But in the state of Texas, there are
Yep.
just not enough TDA inspectors, and pest control guys are
Yep.
doing stuff on docks and not getting reported. But occasionally they do get called to the carpet for it. They can stop your truck, inspect your truck. The state will come and audit us every single year, and they want to look at our records and they want to look at products. So yeah, there is some oversight, which is a benefit to that. There's, yeah, of course, there's a benefit. There's no oversight to homeowners.
Well, let's
At the
talk a little
same
bit
time,
about those docks, though, because the docks, the customers that you're going to find who have docks are the same customers who are going to have the higher level pest pressures that are going to need some sort of pest control intervention, whether that be DIY or professional or otherwise. So,
mhm.
the likelihood that someone be using an over-the-counter product in an improper way, if you were to label each customer as a probability metric, right? Like, these guys are probably the most likely, and not to single them out, but they have the highest pest pressure, they have the reason to, and they're right on top of a body of water, right? And so I think the dock thing is particularly interesting, because this would be an area where you're right. The average technician, or there may not be enough educated technicians out there who are taking it seriously. But that's a failure of the internal industry taking itself seriously and taking self-policing and training and stuff seriously. But as far as the everyday technician would probably stop their foot before crossing that threshold and go, there's nothing I can really spray here. The homeowner's not going to do that. They're going to see spider webs all over their dock, and they're going to go straight for it, right? So, the dock part of the equation, I think, is a really good example to kind of get on a granular when we're talking about, okay, so what should they have access to? Is this a can of Raid? Is this, professional grade products like what you're talking about, buying it in the concentrate? And more specifically, I hear a lot of people oftentimes kind of retort, well, I'm not afraid of DIY products because it's no threat to our business. They'll waste their money doing that, and then they'll give us a call. But I don't know if that's exactly the case. Are they falsely advertising? Are they selling a product that doesn't actually work? Or are they selling a product that and are we talking about 97% of the industry, right? And I remember going through Terminex training, and they taught us that only 3% of homeowners actually had professional pest control services. So the amount of money to be gained, and the use of this, or where things stand, I guess where I kind of want to hone in on, who does this benefit? Is this benefit the homeowners? Does this benefit the manufacturers? Does this benefit PCOs? Who is this current model benefiting the most?
So this current model actually benefits. I'm sorry. Let me know if I'm jumping into it.
Go for it.
But this current model actually benefits people somewhat fairly. In my experience, when you're talking about boat docks, you're talking about people who probably also own boats. Those people also have money, and a lot of them do pay for professional services. Even the ones that do their own DIY, some of them do bug spray around their boat docks. The biggest one I've heard, because it works on spiders fairly well, is Demon WP.
The best
There's
branding in pest control history.
It's the best naming convention ever. But in reality, the one that I've heard the most used around boat docks for spiders is Demon WP. Now, the bad thing is it's going to kill some fish. And that's not a good thing. Environmentally, that's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. What I am saying is the fish will make more fish. It's a big lake. So unless somebody dumps a substantial amount of product into the waterway, it's not going to do any significant environmental impact. Are you going to occasionally find an animal that has some pesticide in its system? Sure. But if I go through and I go to my local grocery store and start testing vegetables, I'm probably going to find traces of pesticides there as well. And it's okay for us to buy and eat them. People overreact when it comes to things like that, minor traces of pesticides, and then they want to make more regulations. Again, regulations are dangerous. Once a regulation is put in place, it doesn't go away for a very long time, if at all, but it carries the same weight as a law, and nobody voted on the regulation. So I'm not a fan of regulations for that reason specifically, because we live in a country where we're governed by a government that is the servant, not the sovereign. So when it comes down to it, yes, some people are going to make mistakes. They're already making mistakes with other things that are environmentally harmful, and you're not going to weed those people out. Should the rest of society be punished? Do people drink and drive and kill other people? Yes, they do. Should we regulate cars more so that only professional drivers can drive them? No. Everything in this country would come to a standstill. So there's some, do I think that some things should be considered more restrictive? Yes, I can agree to that. Do I think that homeowners should have access to commercial grade products? The answer is yes. I think they should have access to some of them. And I think that, reading the label is good, and they should buy them from places that encourage that and also give them some education as to, hey, this is why you're buying this. This is how it works. This is what it works against, and this is how you should be using it. At least that. Now, that's why places like Walmart, Home Depot, and Lowe's don't typically carry professional grade products, because the person who's working in the pesticide aisle that week was working over in screws and nails last week, and he doesn't know anything more about that product than the person buying it.
Right.
That's why shops like ours
Yep,
exist.
absolutely. Now, you said something right at the beginning of that comment about the environmental impact, the reality of the environmental impact versus maybe the perception of the environmental impact. One of the things that I've noticed in our industry is we tend towards trying to be very factual. We try to be very honest. We try to look at an assessed risk very analytically. The problem we have, though, is when the public looks at what we do, they do not have that same context. So someone is going to take a cell phone video of somebody doing something that we know is absolutely harmless, and that's going to cause material to get banned. Things are going to happen that we know aren't really a big deal, that are things that happen every day that don't have real risk necessarily to the environment or people or really anything. But because the public doesn't have that context, that's what concerns me a lot of times. And that's what, like in England, when they had their glue boards banned, it was because somebody got a mouse stuck on a glue board and gave it to a parliament member and said, here, this is what happens to these things. Everybody freaks out, and they ban glue boards. That's the sort of thing that it concerns me when you have that availability of a material. Someone's going to take a cell phone camera and it's going to end up on the news. They're going to take a video and it's going to end up on the news. And no one's going to be there to give context. No one's coming back and asking us, hey, can you give us the balanced take on, was that material actually risky for that dock, or was that material actually used appropriately for that rodent, or whatever? There's not a lot of that context that's given. So it can run off the rails pretty quickly and lead to more regulations, which is exactly what you don't want to see, right?
So you're right, but at the same time, your footprint of exposure is relatively small. You're saying
Yep.
that somebody could take a video and post it on TikTok and it might go viral and 20,000 people see it, versus a major event like the death of George Floyd. That caused major change. But somebody getting a cell phone video, that person's going to get in trouble. They're going to get slapped with a fine. They may have to pay some environmental remediation. But one or two small events, especially in the realm of pest control, even on your environmental, eco warriors per se, they just don't have enough power and enough clout to stop the capitalist machine. The amount of money generated by the manufacture and sale of pesticides is in the billions, hundreds of billions across this country. So somebody crying because they don't want to see plastic straws anymore, now you
Well,
can't have them in California. The rest
I
of us
think
still get plastic straws.
I think this makes a good segue because you want to talk about news headlines, you want to talk about virality. Right now we are in the internet age. We are seeing a ton of companies attempting some sort of online marketing. They have their technicians out in the field trying to capture video. So the probability of someone out there with a phone capturing that little micro incident is higher now than ever, especially consider like in the 80s or in the 90s or something, where maybe having access to such easily distributable footage has definitely changed. But also kind of want to hone in a little bit on this Monsanto ruling, right? Because this I feel like is going to have downstream effects either way, right? And we talked a little bit about the naming convention that came with Demon WP, and how, you know, I myself still hear, like, every time, oh, you know, someone come walking up to you like, oh, I got this good stuff, this Demon WP, like, you know, and we know as operators, like, that's not even the newest stuff on the block. That's like relative. That's like, you know, last year's news. Like, nobody cares about Demon WP anymore. That's old. That's old. But, you know, it stuck around because the name. So now we have this landmark case. Manufacturers are not going to be held liable. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I never thought Monsanto should have been held liable in the first place. And there's a very, very valid reason for that. You're talking about Monsanto, the glyphosate thing. It was a big lawsuit, and then now they just had it over. Right, they just had it over.
Yeah, consumer.
Monsanto's glyphosate is Roundup. Mm-hmm. Who is Roundup sold to? End users, and it comes with instructions, and it says wear closed-toed shoes, long pants, a long sleeve shirt, and Joe Nobody is out in his yard with board shorts and. Doing.
Oh no.
Monsanto's mistake, and it was kind of a mistake, but Monsanto had known carcinogens in the inner ingredients and did not disclose that the product was potentially carcinogenic. That was their downfall and why they lost that case the first time, and then they appealed it, of course. But the people who got sick were generally people who weren't following the instructions.
Sure, but is that not making the case then that the general public has a high risk of harming themselves and poisoning themselves and are less likely to read the label? I guess part of where I want to touch on a little bit is the new naming convention, right? I feel like we've gone through a time period where product names have been relatively sterile, right? Alpine, Fendona, you know, these kind of names that don't really, you know, jump off the shelf, right? But now that Monsanto has kind of been given the green light that, like, hey, look, you know, we're past the eco days, you know, Trump administration's come in and you know, cut all this red tape, big V8 engines are back in play, and chemical companies aren't being held liable. Are we going to see a flood of new retail products, Exterminator Super Plus Max, Murdinator Expert, you know, I mean, like, are you just going to see the craziest names, you know, starting to come out really promoting, you know, this older method of, you know, what's effective at selling, you know, I mean, really.
I think what you're going to see more than that, because I think people will play it safe, but I think what's going to be more than that is I think you're going to see people start adding other things to what would ordinarily be considered a green pesticide. You know, yeah, it's a green pesticide, but you're going to start seeing them squeak in a little bit of bifenthrin in there or some lambda-cy, something. But right now, the green pesticides are still popular, even though they are still a toxin, but nobody really knows how much because they're 25B exempt under FIFRA. So they don't have the same oversight as these other products that are considered chemicals.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I would have to say, Marcus, that I don't think you're going to see the era of the more, let's say, colorful names, you know, trade names for these products, just because we have to give out labels to our clients. And so how many housewives, when you're at a residential place, want to get a label, and at the top of that it says Demon WP? That lady does not want to see that on that label. She wants to see, oh, Alpine, look at this, ooh, nice.
But it's not a flood of professional products that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a flood of retail products, like your Home Depot, Can of Raid, Home Defense, you know, those sort of products. You know, are we going to see the colorful naming convention kind of come back up, or maybe even you know, manufacturers being a little more risque in the sense of, you know, starting to put dual actions? And, you know, we've already seen what was it? Into Care recently made their big license deal with Ortho, right? And they now have these. So that right there is an example of a product that has had incredible commercial success and has been really a commercially only available product. Not to say that it had to be that way, but it wasn't something you could just go in at Home Depot and find, and now you can, right? So part A of that question is, are we going to see more retail products, stepping away from, the raid and the home defense, right? Are we going to start seeing the colorful name conventions and a plethora of products available, being a little bit more aggressive? And then B, this fusing of professional into the retail space, with Into Care and other kind of licensed products. Is this something that pest control professionals or operators should we be concerned about? Should we be, is there something that we should be keeping an eye on in this area? I know that the Into Care buckets specifically are a relatively environmentally safe product, but what I'm talking about is jockeying over that 97% of the marketplace, right? If only 3% of people are using professional grade market or using 3% of homeowners are using professional services, that means the other 97% are just running to Home Depot or Lowe's, and they're gathering whatever they can. And in that way, the manufacturer's not getting hurt, and in some way the homeowner could be getting hurt, or has they are clearly examples of them hurting themselves. And I see a lot of operators say, well, that's not a problem for me, because when those $5 or $15 treatments fail, they'll call me and then I'll charge them $250. Is that the correct thinking? Are these products really no threat at all? And they're not effective?
They are effective. They are effective, and there have been many studies done on that. But Raid actually came out with like a whole lineup of their products and did treatments. But you have to remember that you can have the right product and use it the wrong way and fail.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have the wrong product and use it the wrong way and succeed by getting lucky. Now some products are hitting the market that are considered professional grade, or used by professional companies like the Into Care buckets, but that's a fungus. That's Bavaria bassiana. There's nothing that can do bad to the environment. So that kind of doesn't count. Naming conventions, they already have, the naming conventions exist, like Kills Bed Bugs Plus, Black Flag. There's already some names out there as far as that goes. But with your over-the-counter products, what I could see is potentially them increasing the amount of active ingredient, but that's iffy at best, because those companies are already making a boatload of money by selling you a product set at this percentage of active ingredient, which costs this amount to manufacture, and they're controlling their profitability by cost of manufacture. If the cost of manufacture goes up, then their prices are going to start rivaling the prices of professional products, and people are just going to go buy Palstar.
For the manufacturer,
hold
where's
on
the
one
profit
second.
margin? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. No, I want to hear.
Hold on one second, because I want to answer your question with a question. So you're asking, so 97% of people don't use professional pest management, like let's say homeowners. I think it's actually like 90% now. I think actually some of the door knockers have pushed out the percentages further. They've actually opened up new markets, people that hadn't used it before. But I think to answer that, we have to consider first, why is that 95 or 90 or whatever the percentage is of people, homeowners, not currently using a professional operator? Aside from not having a pest problem, I think there's two things. I think there's cost. They're worried that it's going to be expensive. And then there's fear, that they're worried that, well, that guy's showing up with the good stuff, and then my kid is going to end up, dying and keeling over immediately, right? There's the fear and the cost, and those two things. And the over-the-counter, it pulls into both of those. Oh, okay, this thing that's the exact same thing that we're going to use from my professional truck, but I got it over the counter, so it must be safer. So I can use it however I want. There's an assumption of safety. They wouldn't let me buy it if it was any dangerous, right? So I can do anything I want with it, and it only costs $4.99. And I don't know when I call a pest control company, it's going to be thousands. People have this idea that it's a small fortune to do a yellow jacket nest, when it's really not. But those two things are, the over-the-counter market definitely bites into what people would be forced to use us. because of those two factors. That's my take on that.
So let me jump into what you just said. Fear does play into it, and the cost does play into it. But you're missing a third option, and that is that some people, a lot of people, are just simply DIYers. Could I hire a professional lawn service? Sure, I could. Am I going to? No, because I own a lawnmower and I can do it myself. Did I pay an electrician to come and fix my panel box? No, I needed to swap out a breaker. I had a screwdriver and I knew how to do it. So I did it myself. Not because I was afraid of spending the money. I've got $2,000 worth of liquor bottles in my garage. I've got the money. I'm just a do-it-yourselfer. I'd rather do it myself. I need a new table.
Totally. Yep, totally. But here's the thing. As we move forward, there's a lot of market studies. Millennials and younger are not do-it-yourselfers. They're the do-it-for-me. That's definitely
I agree with
a change.
100%. I agree with you 100%. That is not a debate. That is going to open up a lot more money on the professional side because they just don't want to be bothered with doing it. Right now, the amount of money they're able to generate with their TikTok channel is more than some people have worked up to after 10 years of working for the same company and getting raises and promotions. You got 16-year-olds making six figures doing goofy videos. So they would rather do what they're doing and let you take care of all that stuff. That is 100% correct. And I see it all the time. I do. But there's so many aspects of this to consider. But this is the one thing to consider.
Let's talk about motivations for a moment. So, manufacturers, where are they squeezing the most profitability from? Are they squeezing it from the $5.99 can of Raid, or are they squeezing it from the $59 bottle of pesticide? Because you made a very interesting point. You said actually when you look it up, when you extrapolate cost per gallon, you're actually making a lot better deal on the concentrated product, right? So these manufacturers, do they have an incentive to want to push out more products to the retail market? Is it more profitable for them to do that? And if so, does that have any effect on what products again are available? We're really the bulk of this conversation is about access, right? And I think you guys kind of touched a little bit about regulation incentives and the things that kind of push people in a direction based on regulations or what's on the label. But let's talk about profit margins. Let's talk about money, the thing that drives the real conversation underneath all of this. Are the manufacturers looking out for our interests when they cut these deals with Into Care and other stuff? Or are they fine? Is it just another revenue source, or is it a superior revenue source? Do you get what I'm saying?
Just another revenue source for most of them.
I want to add on to that question. I want to hear John's take because I'm not in the retail space at all. So I want to hear your take on this, John. It's John, right?
Sean.
Sean.
Yeah. Sean. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. So Sean, I want to hear your take because you're in the retail space. So the profit margin for sure. I've asked a lot of manufacturers as we have manufacturers rep. I've asked them all the time, do you make more money on the professional side or do you sell more on the residential side? They don't really want to give me that answer. So that would be interesting to hear. The second part of that though is the Monsanto thing. Will we see more companies move towards the professional market for liability protection? Because Monsanto, if you're selling only to the professional market, like look at Apprehend or Into Care, I don't know if they're going out now, but if you're selling only to the professional market, your likelihood of having somebody buy that material, store it properly, follow the label, and not sue you for some giant loss down the road you're probably better off and more protected from liability than selling to the general public and saying, here's a material, have fun, good luck. So I want to hear your take on that.
Okay, so my take specifically is I provided you the material which was legal to sell in my state. That material came with full instructions. You didn't read it, that's your fault. You got injured, that's also your fault. It's like the lady who burned her hoo-ha with a hot coffee from McDonald's. Was it McDonald's fault that she stuck it between her legs instead of using the cup holder? No. Was she an idiot? Yes.
But she won that
win $1 million?
lawsuit.
Yes.
But do you know why she
Now,
won
was
that
it
lawsuit, though? She won that lawsuit
because
because McDonald's was serving their coffee way too hot, and they knew this, and they had actually had a pattern of burning lots of people, and it was literally, they did the numbers, and they found that it was cheaper to pay off the settlements than it was to get a higher quality of
yeah,
coffee. So they
I
had a
agree.
profit margin incentive. It's not like it was an unknown cause. You're right. She should have taken some more personable responsibility. But if it wouldn't have been the
Agreed.
old lady in her crotch, it'd have been the next guy in line who would have done, the next person when you're serving
Okay.
millions of customers,
So
right? So that's the
yes,
reason why she
McDonald's
won
coffee.
that lawsuit. That lawsuit has made a landmark for American culture of wasted litigious purpose. But I don't know. The question, I don't want this, I don't want the moderator to slant one way or the other, so I don't want to argue like as if it's a
So
2v1, but I do want to
I'm
bring that
fixing to
up
take you
because it
down.
is interesting that the McDonald's thing has not
It's an icon. It is a cultural icon now
yes,
in this country.
yes,
It is a landmark case.
yes.
However, yes, McDonald's served their coffee over temp because you were getting it from a drive-through and you were driving to a location and they wanted it to still be hot when you got there. So they were giving it to you hotter than they had to so that it wasn't cold by the time you got to the office. That
Hmm.
makes sense. Why you wouldn't use a cup holder and stick it between your legs doesn't make sense. That was dumb. Now, again, that's
Fair enough.
that whole same thing that I'm saying. I'm giving you the product. I'm giving you the instructions with the product. All you have to do is read them. If you couldn't be bothered to do that and you got sick as a result of not knowing how to use the product that I gave you the instructions for, you are at fault, not the
Did
manufacturer.
it
I
did it
just made a
protect
product.
Monsanto though? I'm sh- I'm sure Monsanto's lawyers made that argument. Did it protect them from a giant lawsuit?
So it didn't.
Whether the person did it didn't.
Well, it didn't because precedent had been set. And precedents in the cases like that McDonald's coffee lady, those kind of precedents exist. And every time something like that happens, and you do get bleeding heart judges who go, yeah, but they're a big wealthy corporation, they can afford it. I'm going to rule in your favor, you poor thing. You know, you've now set precedent. You have two, you have three kinds of laws in this country. You have civil law, I'm sorry, you have criminal law, you have civil/corporate law, and you have case law. Case law is, well, there was a case similar to this one 10 years ago where you would be ruling in my client's favor, just like this case, because of this, this, and this. That's not law. That's basically what's called operating under color of law, which is not law and is not legal. But it happens all the time because a precedent had been set. And precedents are dangerous if they're set in the wrong way. If you go and you buy a bicycle from Walmart, you put it together, you check, you make everything tight, you oil the chain, you got your helmet on, and you fall off your bicycle, scrape your leg up. Are you going to sue Huffy? I mean, they made the bicycle.
Today
It's a
probably.
potentially dangerous,
So
just a
now
potentially dangerous
are there
thing.
yeah, are there lawyers right now looking at the Monsanto case and saying, "Hey, you know what? Bell has a whole bunch of money. Hey, Syngenta has a whole bunch of money. Let's look through their products and let's see what's happened and
Sure,
let's see if we can bring something on them."
sure.
That's
That's the
yeah.
that's the thing is they do it because there's money to be made. In that same vein, earlier a question was asked about pesticides and the revenue streams, and is it a primary revenue stream? The simple fact is the sale and the production and sale of pesticides generates a lot of money, and that's not going to stop because when there's money to be made, people are going to make it. So you have companies that are like even Syngenta, as big as they are, they don't hold a candle to BASF. There is almost nothing in your house right now that BASF doesn't have their finger in, from the polyurethane on your furniture to the bug spray in your garage. They make all kinds of things, not just pesticides. The BASF pesticide division is almost a side project. Um, but then if you look at the difference between that and over-the-counter stuff, well, CSI and Bayer, which is now InView, Syngenta, None of them are making over the counter stuff. That's all stuff made by FC Johnson Wax and all these other companies that are on that consumer goods end user product side. And that is their main revenue stream. But anything like Raid, anything that's FC Johnson Wax, they also make a whole host of cleaning products and other materials. So even their pesticide division is not the main source of their income. It is profitable though, and as long as they can make profit, they're going to continue to make it.
Well, let me punch out a little bit on Andy and some of the free market versus regulation stuff here. So, there's a sentiment that a little bit of additional regulation will help to increase ticket prices and will help to increase, overall technician wages. But tell me a little bit about, or I guess I should say, Sean, let's open the floor up a little bit about how maybe that could fail. How additional regulations does not actually necessarily equate to increased wages or increased service prices, and what are some free market things that can be done? How do we sharpen ourselves to claw more of that market of that that 90% back in our direction as operators? After all, it's all about making money, and we want the money to go into our hands, right, or as much of it as possible. So, talk to me a little bit about that. Where I know you said something about, regulations are hard to claw back, but are there some examples where you can actually bog an industry down with regulations to the point where it's actually really bad for the worker?
Of course there are. It already is. Almost everything that governs, the pesticide industry is regulatory and not law. We're under FIFRA, which he had mentioned earlier, which stands for the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. That is law. That was voted on by our lawmakers and policymakers, right? But the risk cup factor was regulations, right? And that has nothing to do with common sense. And people who felt a certain way passed regulations, and it wasn't based on science. It wasn't based on data or field studies. It was just, well, we just feel that this is not safe. And it is detrimental to the pest control industry. You mentioned how can we claw back some more percentage? I'm going to tell you 2 ways that you're going to claw back more percentage into the pest control industry. Number 1, technicians need to be and dress more professionally, and they need to use more professional equipment so that it looks like something that the homeowner can't accomplish on their own. If that's number 1. Number 2, be a better salesman, right? Okay. That sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but that is just what it is. Be a better salesman. But if I go into your house to do a flea treatment with 2 cans of aerosol, it looks like something you could do yourself. If I go into your house with an Actisol machine, that doesn't look like something you can do yourself. If I go spray around in your yard with my backpack sprayer or my B&G, that looks like something you can do yourself. If I strap on a mist blower, that does not look like something you can do yourself. That piece of equipment is unfamiliar to you. Now you understand why you hired the pest control company to come out. Now you understand why that ticket price is $400.
Right. And, to kind of piggyback on that as well, I've talked to quite a few of the people over there in the UK, and they've been limited down to now basically only RTU products, right? So they can't mix their own products anymore. They can't mix multiple active ingredients together. And in a major sense, they really actually can't use a lot of the equipment that would help with perception and value building. I don't want to say they're limited to basically aerosol cans, but when manufacturers start to lean towards RTU products, they also lean towards packaging that favors them. And that oftentimes comes in the form of aerosol cans, which are effective and they work really well and they're cheap to manufacture, but they look as cheap as they are. I mean, it's hard, and I think you make a correct point. It's hard to build a value or a perception of value when you come in doing something that looks like you could have just ran around the corner and spent $5 on. So Andy, punch back a little against that, okay? I mean, what's going on?
Let me have a rebuttal here. So all the things that, and Sean, I love you. I mostly agree with you. This is just for fun, okay, man. So
Go for it.
the most of the things you're listing are pushing up on the ceiling, and I totally agree with it. Have better uniforms, have better equipment, do something that's worth people paying more for. Like if you just show up and you spray somebody's house in 5 minutes and you're gone, like people shouldn't pay anything for that. It's terrible, right? If you're actually doing a good service, but that's pushing up on the ceiling. It's not demonstrating the drag that regulatory can have on an industry to sort of stifle it. Now, regulations to me set the floor. You're talking pushing the ceiling up, which is awesome. I'm totally for it. But the regulations set that floor so that you're not competing against the guy who is going to go, hey, I'll charge you $50 a month. I'm going to hose your house from the truck, with a power sprayer and do 50
Okay.
houses a day. Like let's set a floor that's higher, and then we can push the ceiling up
Okay.
from there. And now we can make
I
some real headway.
I agree with you. Now let's go and touch on the regulations and how they're harmful. Top choice is fipronil based water activated granules, and it is a restricted use product, and you have to have a license to purchase it, and you can only use it once per year, right? According to the label, and it is a restricted use product. But I could go on eBay and order a bottle of Taurus, which is fipronil, and liquid spray my yard as a homeowner. Even though the label says no more than twice per year, I could do it on a monthly basis if I want to, and it's not a restricted use product. Here's another great one about regulations. New Van Pro Strips. They are a fumigant for small enclosed spaces. They have been upgraded to a RUP label, okay, restricted use product. It's a fumigant, it's a restricted use product. But Prozap Pest Strips, which is literally the exact same product, it just doesn't come in a 3-pack. It's packaged as a single. It's still dichlorovose. It's the exact same percentage. It's the exact same chemical, but because I'm only buying one at a time, it's not restricted use and homeowners can buy it. That's what regulations do. They make no sense. They limit what's available. They limit how what is available can be used, even though there's an identical product under a different name. Great case on this. Do you remember a product called Dragnet?
Yep.
Okay. Dragnet was taken off the market for a little while because of regulations, because it was permethrin, but it was considered too strong. They wanted it off the market. So another company came out, Dragnet allowed another company to come out with the exact same product with a different name, and they passed it through, and it was no problem. And that was Tengard. Who here knows about Tengard? Spell it backwards. Spell Tengard backwards. It's Dragnet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I'm against regulations. Regulations do set the floor, but they don't set the floor in a way that makes any sense. There's no common sense in it. It's all based on how whatever that committee felt at the time. And that's why I'm against regulations. That's why, yes, there should be some floor set, but it should be set in laws. And if there are regulations, those regulations need to be backed by field research and scientific study. And
Well,
that is where I stand on that.
So the reason why I had this debate come up for topic, the reason why this was really itching on my brain so much is obviously recently I started my very own pest control company. So I am out here competing amongst the best of the best and the worst of the worst. And Houston has a lot of everything, right? There are every check in the truck that you can possibly imagine, all the way up to people who kind of claim to be more of a concierge style service and everything in between. And like every good business owner, I'm out there, I'm putting myself out there, I'm promoting, I'm doing the online flyers and reaching out to the social media and such. And I come across a post from a 12-year-old kid who's offering like $30 house sprays, right? And this kid is going to roll up in his bicycle with his wagon behind him and a 4-gallon sprayer and a 1-gallon sprayer. And this kid is going to look, I respect the entrepreneurial spirit, but it got me thinking, shouldn't regulations play a part here somewhere? There's no way this kid is walking into a Solutions or a Bugtime or whatever and buying professional grade quality. This kid has to be getting his mom to go up to the corner store, going up to Home Depot or Lowe's. He's grabbing whatever. I mean, I just of course I didn't, solicit this kid's services, but it just got me thinking, like, does the the public have too much access at this point? If a 25 or if a 12-year-old is offering, $30 services, I don't know. It just got me thinking, okay, we have crossed a threshold now where either the systems we have are not working and they need to be improved better, or there's too much access. Something's going on here. So using this scenario, 12-year-old kid pulls up on a bicycle with a wagon behind him. Steel man the other guy's position. So, Andrew, give me the most generous explanation
first off, I would say
why this should be allowed.
Okay. First off, Marcus, you said something that I agree with. You should not solicit a 12-year-old boy. That was a good choice on your part, right off the bat.
Okay, we'll sound clip that one. That's going on the fucking clips for sure.
My goodness.
Oh, no! Come on!
So good on you.
Okay, so if I may jump in here, regulations. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
So I guess if I'm arguing the flip side of this, I mean, if he was to use exempt material, have at it.
Oh, I didn't even consider that.
That's okay.
I didn't even consider that. Truthfully, if he was using all 25B products, does he need a license? I mean, I guess so.
You go for it. You're good.
And sell, but interesting.
But
Okay, Sean.
Here's the thing. The regulations that need to be put in place for that are already in place. It is illegal to do pest control in exchange for money without having a CA on staff or being a CA yourself.
Yeah.
So what he's doing is illegal.
Facts.
If the state came across his advert, he or his parents could get fined.
Yep.
Right? And that is that's already exists. So the real problem is lack of enforcement, right? Which obviously we don't want, a whole bunch of bug SWAT teams out there waiting to pounce on trucks. Bug lives matter. But at the same time, that's one of those things where that shouldn't be happening, but people shouldn't be smoking crack either. It's already against the law. They still do it. Those regulations are already in place. No 12-year-old kid shouldn't be out there trying to do pest control. But there's already rules against that. We can't. That's why I said over regulation. You're going to react to. You brought up the UK. First of all, I don't pay much attention to Muslim countries, but they have a history of overreacting. They have a strong history of overreacting. First, a madman escaped from an insane asylum, got his hands on a gun, and shot some kids. They banned guns in the UK. The number one murder weapon became a 6-inch carving knife. Every kitchen in the UK had one. So I want to say it was about 5 years back. You can look it up, but they actually had the mayor of London started a campaign. Stop knives, save lives. They wanted to ban knives. What are you going to do to cut your vegetables? Use harsh language?
Wait a minute. But are you still manning the pro regulation argument?
I'm just saying, you can go way too far on regulations and over-regulate something until it becomes a problem. And using UK as an example, bad example. But yeah, that's. You bring up the kid, he knows. He may not even know he shouldn't be doing that, but he shouldn't be doing that. Those rules already exist. We don't need new rules.
Okay. Oh, man. I Okay, we'll take one last good jab at a kind of a theoretical question here. So I'm gonna ask you to suspend your own personal beliefs and push your side's argument to the nth degree, to the absolute furthest degree, right? What would it look like in an optimal hyper regulated environment, Andy? And Sean, what would an optimal total
Yep.
free range, free market, controls the day? What would that scenario look like? So Andrew, start first. Tell me what is if we take your position and push it to the nth degree, what does that world look like? In an ideal way, like in an optimal way.
Well, actually, yeah. Okay. Actually, a lot of people don't maybe remember, but when they passed FIFRA and we started to have licensing and we had to do CEU credits and that kind of thing, Purdue had a pest management course that you would take a 4-year class. Like
I'm getting a little bit of.
you take a 4-year course of study and graduate as a pest control operator at the end of that. Like they did away with it over time, but I think if you had enough regulation and you were like, maybe just under a doctor level type of requirement, you would have extremely high paid money. We'd have that. We'd finally have the time. We're all talking. I don't know if I'm still a lot of regulations, especially on the license time to do all that IPM stuff. Enough money to spend enough time walking around the factory and find all the holes. Those kinds of things. If you have enough regulation.
Oh no, he's breaking up. I'm losing him. Are you losing him, Sean?
Yeah, he's breaking up pretty bad. He cuts in and out.
No, I think we.
Oh no, are we back?
Yep,
oh no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's gone.
We lost him.
He completely left. Okay, that's all right. We'll
I scared him away.
We'll give him a chance to pop back in here.
Yeah, look, I can wait.
Well, take a second and tell us a little bit about what would the optimal free market, minimal regulation, no regulation, or regulations are bad kind of mentality. What would that look like in an ideal world, or ideal version of that?
So if you want my take on it, things could stay exactly as they are or even be to some degree deregulated, and you would see very little to no change. You would even still see an increase in the amount of business done by pest control companies. Again, you take it upon yourself to look professional. People are smarter than you give them credit for in a lot of cases. There are some dummies out there, but there are some dumb technicians out there too who are making mistakes and spilling product and not telling anybody, and the hose on their spray rig leaks and they just didn't fix it because they were lazy. So every time they do a service, they're spilling a gallon into Mrs. Jones's driveway. So all of that stuff happens. But at the end of the day, you pay pest control partially for what they do. You pay them mainly for what they know. Yes, you can go and do the job yourself, but you're going to fail because you don't know what I know. So you're going to end up paying me anyway. The pest control industry is not going to go away, but people are getting lazier, which means you got the chance to sell more services. But regulating it to the point where pest control becomes very, very profitable because we can charge more money for it is like saying poor people don't deserve pest control. I don't care if rats are running around in your house and your family gets hantavirus because you can't afford my service. I don't, talking strictly on a vector-borne illnesses side of things, which is very prevalent on insects and rodents. You're saying that the poorest of our society shouldn't have the ability to protect themselves from these things because they can't afford to pay.
Yeah, well, even you can even say the more soldiers in the field, fighting back against it, the more effective we are and hoarding off these kind of epidemics, these pandemics of vectors and virus outbreaks. So there's definitely a case to be made for that. I think
So, well, that's
if I were to draw my stake in the line somewhere, I do believe in regulation, and I do think that regulation needs to be promoted in a healthy sense that makes people feel good about this job, that it's a real career, that it's a real job, that it's a real blue collar trade, and it has to take itself serious. So I think having a certain amount of regulation is good for that. And when we see the lapse in that, people not taking their job serious or acting, negligently, it's because they don't appreciate what they have, which is really good gainful employment. But in a free market world, really what I feel is the best answer is to make that service offering that goes beyond solution creating, right? So right now the kind of model is I have a specific problem, call in, I need my ants taken care of, company comes out, responds, and takes care of their ants. They have carpenter, whatever it is, right? And so they kind of come on a one-off basis. And I think the best service offering that you can do, and we see general pest control agreements, offer most of the flying insects, or the 23 general, crawling and flying insects on their service agreements. But I think part of being that professional means, like, I have all the tools. I have all the things that you don't want to spend your money on to solve a problem. So can you go and get a $5 can of Rage? Sure. But then if you've got mosquito issues or rodent issues or bedbug issues, or these are all, various different service offerings you either have to shop for or you have to go, get solutions for. And I think the best thing that we can do on a free market is just give them that blanket coverage, peace of mind. I am your bug guy. I do all of the things for you. You pay me effectively a protection fee, right? Like a monthly subscription. And a lot of people are moving to monthly billing. And in that time frame, if anything comes up, and anything that may come up, we come out and we resolve that for you, and we do specialized targeted treatments to resolve those problems. So instead of the company that comes out and just does the same spray over and over and over and over again, or the company that comes out and does their one problem and then moves on, I think if we want to win in the free market, it's leaning into what you were saying earlier about value building and value perception. If I have on my truck the ability to solve 150 different problems, then you don't have to go shopping for 150 different cans of spray, right? You can just call your one provider, and as long as you're locked into a favorable service agreement, then you don't have to worry about what is that going to cost me. I pay my flat rate, I pay my monthly bill, and in exchange, I don't have to go out and have 50 different solutions in my garage. And I think that's the value that on the free market side, if we're gonna win, and we're gonna be in an environment that's not heavily regulated, we're gonna be in an environment where there's not a lot of inspectors. And by all means, I don't actually want a bunch of inspectors. I think you're right. If we have, if they hired a bunch of inspectors, all they would do is just harass like everyday technicians, you know what I mean, as opposed to
exactly
really
that's exactly correct.
Yeah, so I do agree that there's a limit behind how much regulation you want to make, but I think at the end of the day, it's all about value.
Here's my position on that. Value is built in. Value is a perceived thing. If you look more valuable, they'll pay you more money.
Yep.
Right? It's a perceived thing. So you build in the value to yourself. There's always a chuck in the truck that's going to try to undercut you. So pest control, among all the various service providers, is where we end up cutting our own throats. But if you talk about regulations, all the regulations that need to be in place are already in place. And even we don't follow them. How many times in your pest control career have you gone out in a short-sleeved polo shirt but used a product where the label said long-sleeve shirt was required? But the label is the law, and and that's the regulation. And we didn't follow it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that a day in my life.
Exactly.
Unless you got an evidence
So-
photo of me. All right, well, it looks like we're not going to be able to get Andy back in here, and I don't want this to become a debate without our debate partners. So you guys killed it. Y'all covered a lot of ground. This has been a good one. Had some good laughs, especially right here at the end, getting to cut loose a little bit. I appreciate you for spending your time with us this evening. Thank you for arguing your side of the aisle. I got to give the flowers to Andy when I get a chance to see him next or talk to him here in just a moment.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Tell him I enjoyed it, and it was nice to meet him. I'd love to talk to him again. He does have some good positions. I can't say I agree 100%, but on a lot of the stuff, we're all pest control professionals, and we do agree on a lot of stuff. So it was wonderful to get the chance to speak to him and to you again as well.
Likewise. Alrighty, Sean. Well, thank you so much, buddy. You have a blessed night. Sleep well, and we will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. You too. Take care.
Well, folks, that's tonight's episode of the License to Kill show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. Thank you for working with us with our crazy technical difficulties we seem to have every episode. No, I really appreciate the industry for getting behind the podcast. I really appreciate the conversations, the discussion. I think we've only just began to scratch the surface on what these kind of topics will have in their impacts in the 5 and 10 year mark. And so I'm excited to revisit these conversations in the future. If you guys have any suggestions for more conversations, more topics that we should do, feel free to drop those in the comments. Feel free to send a message on Discord. Join the group. And guys, y'all stay safe.
Thanks for tuning into the License to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, stay connected.